So arthro means joints. Somebody who has arthritis, they have joint pain, pods, feet. So they have jointed appendages. Yeah, that is the correct answer. Everybody wrote that. So the answer is C here. Okay, so next is chordata. So chordata is very diverse. It includes lots of groups. So what are you going to notice that later we make another family tree just for chordata. So it has several groups and it also contains us. Chordata is, we go under chordata. That's the phylum. So that's phylum chordata. Chordates, they have two groups. They have invertebrates and they have vertebrates. Invertebrates, no backbone. Vertebrates, they have a backbone. So two kinds. And there are 4 features of a chordate that I need you guys to memorize. I will ask you that on the exam. And those 4 features are a notochord. So they have a notochord. Dorsal nerve cord, which is dorsal means back, and this nerve cord is hollow. Pharyngeal slits. So this is space back of the nose and mouth. If you study anatomy, you will notice that the back of the throat, they call it oropharynx, back of the mouth, actually back of the mouth, oropharynx, and back of the nose, nasopharynx. So there are some pharyngeal slits known as pharynx. And then there's post-anal tail. This is very interesting because there's a tail after the anus. If it was a worm, then the anus would be here at the tip, but the anus is, the tail is extending post-anus. So the tail is after the anus. So that's very interesting. So those are 4 main characteristics. Now, I just told you that humans are under chordates, and you might think we don't have all this. So if any organism had these 4 characteristics at one point in their life, either in the embryo or as an adult, they are under chordates. So for us, for humans, in the embryo, we have a tail, which gets observed. And the only thing that's left is tailbone, coccyx. Also in anatomy, you'll learn that's called coccyx. So tailbone, if you fall on it, it's gonna hurt. So you still have, some part of that left. Gill slits, these are holes that close up before we are born. Notochord, it turns into our spinal cord. And then the dorsal nerve cord becomes the spine. So we have all these different 4 characteristics, and I need you guys to memorize this, and it says all chordates. So we are in chordates. That means we do have all this at one point in our life. So let me show you some comparative embryology. So if you look here, that's a bird, reptile, and that's us humans. It shows we have gill pouches. These close up if we're born. And then we also have a tail. And then the dorsal nerve cord and the notochord. One becomes the spinal cord and the other spine. So we have all that. So we all look very similar in the embryo. So we are under chordates. The tail gets observed and then the gill slits close up. So chordates include invertebrates and vertebrates. If it's invertebrate, it's not going to have a backbone, and vertebrates, they have a backbone. Now look at this. This was the tree we've been going over. This was the one we were kind of following. Now we took chordates, and then it has its own family tree. So it has its own family tree. This is the ancestor chordate. It's going to have those 4 correct features: notochord, dorsal nerve cord, pharyngeal slits, and a post-anal tail. And then we can further divide into all these different kinds. There's 3 types of fish. There are some invertebrates. The 3 types of fish is the jawless fish, cartilaginous fish, bony fish. Then we have amphibians. Amphibians also include amphibians and reptiles. Reptiles also includes birds, and then the mammals. So there's a lot more diversity into this group that we had to make a different family tree for this. So here are the 4 features that I need you guys to know are listed. Notochord and minichord develops into the backbone. Dorsal hollow nerve cord and becomes the spinal cord. And branchial slits or pouch slits, they close up in us. In other animals, they might still be there. Post-anal tail. So this is the tailbone we're talking about in humans, and then it extends past the anus. And then you will notice science says chordates has these features at some point during its life. So either in the embryo or as an adult. So they have it at some point for them to be put into this group. So first group we have is the invertebrates, tunicates, and lanceolets. So these are invertebrates, means they don't have a backbone. They resemble ancestral chordates. So they have a high resemblance to our ancestors. So tunicates, they look like this. They look like a sponge looking. And it looks like someone wearing a turban. The fabric is wrapped around. And so for the tunicates, the tissue is kind of all wrapped around. And that's why you can see that here too. It looks like a sponge. Lancelet looks like a scalpel or knife. So let me show you some examples of that. So lancet is something that you use to puncture your skin to maybe get your blood type or something. And then scalpel is this is what it looks like, scalpel. So lanceolets, let me put the original name. They look like the scalpel. So if you look here, looks like a scalpel. That's where the name comes from. So this has been preserved and stained. It's knife looking like. So even though it looks like a worm, but it's more related to us than the worms. So it's a chordate. So that's a lancelet. Let me show you tunicates. Tunicates, they look like sponges, and you can see there are a lot of different colors. So they look like sponges, but it looks like a turban being wrapped around. So you can see that here. So those are tunicates. The ones found in California, they're not very impressive looking. Look kind of like this. Let's see. This is what they look like. And if you are walking around maybe during low tide and you see some of the water squirting randomly, that's tunicates clearing their system. So the tunicates, the larvae, they are free swimming, and adults are sessile, means they don't move, they stay in one place like the sponge. So the adults are sessile, and then the larvae are free swimming. Lanceolets filter feed with their tails, bird incendiement. You can kind of see that here. So they also filter feeders. Next group we have is lampreys and hagfish. And this is when the cranium evolved. So cranium evolved, and then we have lampreys and hagfish. If you follow these branches back, hagfish are here. So it still don't have a backbone, it's invertebrate. But lamprey goes back and attaches here, means it has a backbone. So hagfish, no backbone, if you're taking notes. Lamprey, it has a vertebrae, it has a backbone. So let's look at, so these animals, they have a cranium that surrounds the brain, but no jaws. So these are jawless fish. This is the first category. I told you we will go over 3. This is the first category. So jawless fish, they can't really close their mouth, and it stays open the whole time. So look here, like a cookie cutter. It stays open the whole time. They can't really close their mouths. Therefore, their food options are very limited. They don't have a lot of diverse kind of food they can eat. So their food options are very limited. They can maybe find some dead fish, scrape meat off of it and eat that. And they're parasites too. Sometimes they can get big enough in size to take down a fish. So that's the lamprey. Sometimes these can take down a fish. So they can get big enough to take down a fish. You can see that they're parasites. They can be found in the Great Lakes in North America. Let me show you hagfish. So another thing I want you to notice for hagfish, it has a slime production. It makes slime. So show you what that looks like. They're called xenoformers. This is what their slime looks like. So if you maybe piss it off, you poke it, it's gonna produce lots of slime. It oozes all the slime out, and this slime grows a lot bigger in size. So it's going to soak up all the seawater, and it can grow many times its original size. So they use it as a defense mechanism. If there's a predator trying to eat them, it's just gonna ooze all the slime out, and it probably will end up choking the predator, and the predator will die. So it's a defense mechanism. In terms of being useful, so people in biotechnology, they are studying this, like spiders make the silk. So they have the spider webs, were able to get silk from it. So they're trying to see if they can get some type of material from this, and if it can be useful, because it's very thick. It's really thick if you look at it closely. So they're trying to see if they can make it useful and convert it into material that can be used by us. If you go to maybe a seafood place, store, then you will see hagfish in the back there. And Korean people eat lots of hagfish, I think I heard. So it's a seafood too. So next group. So it says that jawless fish feed on small invertebrates. There's not a lot of food options. Decaying animals or suck blood out of fish. So that's how they feed. So next thing we have is jaws. So now we have jaws. Under jaws, we have two more types of fish. We have cartilaginous fish and we have bony fish. So these are vertebrates now, because vertebrate evolved and they have a backbone. So fishes were the first chordates with vertebrae. They protect the spinal cord. So the backbone is going to protect the spinal cord. So cartilaginous fish. Cartilaginous fish is the one that has cartilage. So let me show you human skull first. If you have a human skull, if you're taking anatomy and you look at a human skull, you're going to notice there is big hole here where the nose is supposed to be. Also, there are no ears. And that's because our nose and ears are made out of cartilage, which doesn't preserve. There's no bone there. So that's what cartilage is. If you look at shark jaw, this is what it looks like. It looks like bone, but it's not bone, it's cartilage. If you put it under the microscope, you should be able to see that it's calcified cartilage, mineralized cartilage. So it's not bone. And if you look at shark skeleton, Trader Joe's in San Jose, I think they have this painted on the wall. Have you guys seen it? This is what the skeleton looks like. They have this painted. So now, because they have jaws, they can, yeah, Kawa said yes. So because they have jaws now, they can eat lots of different type of food. They have lots of food options. And when you look at the bony fish, that's the second kind. If you look at the anatomy, you will notice that it has this swim bladder. It's kind of blurry. Trying to see if it'll clear up. Here, it says swim bladder. So the bony fish have this swim bladder, and this swim bladder later evolved into, and the swim bladder is filled with air, so it later evolved into lungs. So it's gonna become lungs later, gets evolved into lungs. So I think I forgot to fill out this table for chordates. Maybe I'll do that at the end or something. Or I can just actually finish the table. Chordata. And these are called chordates. Bilateral, complete. Special things, I want you to know notochord, dorsal nerve cord, gill slits, and post-anal tail. I'm not going to put in examples because there's a lot, so you can probably think of some and put those in. So we're done with this table. You can create maybe another table for chordates on your own if that helps you memorize a little bit better. So we were talking about fish. You can see some cartilaginous fish, the stingray. Have you guys seen this? And maybe when you went for, I don't know what they call it. So maybe for a swim or something. Yeah, True said yes. So you can usually see these if you go to maybe one of the islands where the water is very clear. They're pretty easy to see there. Sharks. Maybe you guys saw some sharks. You put some meat and especially if you're on a boat, they kind of run towards it. They're also cartilaginous fish. And then lungfish is bony fish. And ray fin fish is also bony fish. These have a swim bladder that gets evolved into, that's filled with air and evolves into lungs. I wish I had some videos. I took some videos, but I can't find them when I went to see these different kind of fish. Okay, so next group we have is tetrapods. Tetrapods, pods mean feet. They have 4 limbs. So tetrapods have 4 limbs. Tetra means 4. So lungs and limbs, they have lungs and limbs, and that allows them to live on land because they have lungs. And most of you guys probably know amphibians as frogs. So they have a dual lifestyle. They have 2 modes of life. They have aquatic and then on land. So frogs, newts, salamanders. This is not a lizard because it doesn't have scaly skin. It has this slippery skin. This is a salamander. This looks like earthworm. But these amphibians, they have a dual lifestyle. They can breathe through their skin as long as there is oxygen in water. So they can live in water and they can also live in land. But when it comes to laying their eggs, reproduction, they have to lay their eggs in water. They can't lay their eggs on land because then they'll dry up. So they have to go back to water to reproduce. So they can't be found in places like the desert where there's not a lot of water. They have to stay near water because they have to reproduce with the use of water. And in the link between this, I don't know if your book mentions it, is tiktaalik. Maybe not TikTok. Tiktaalik. So here, somebody found this fossil. So this fossil was discovered by a biologist, and it's a link between fish and amphibian, because if you look at the head, it looks like amphibian. If you look at the tail, it looks like fish. This is the link in between. So they found this fossil. Let me also show you the tadpoles. It's another evidence. So when the amphibian goes back in water, this frog goes back in water, lays the eggs. This is what the tadpole looks like. It doesn't look like a frog. It looks more like a fish. It has this tail, no legs and tail. And then it's going to develop some tails and some legs, and the tail is going to get absorbed and it kind of goes away. Then it starts to look like frog. It doesn't even look like frog, very much like a frog when it's born. So that's another evidence. And some of these frogs don't even go through metamorphism. So, and one example I can think of is called axolotl. And this is water puppy. This is native to Mexico City. This is what it looks like. And you might see this albino version. This is through the biotechnology. They breed them in captivity. And that's why you have this version as well. But in original, this is what they look like. And they're probably gonna go extinct pretty soon. Then you'll be able to find them only in pet stores. Also, this organism is able to grow back. If it loses a limb, it's able to grow back the limbs and all other body parts. So that if they're trying to study the genes, maybe if we can you know, maybe somehow share the genes with this, and maybe we can gain that ability in humans. So the people maybe who got their leg blown off in an accident, or due to cancer, they lost a limb, maybe they'll be able to grow back those limbs. So the reason I'm showing you this is because it never becomes a full frog. It stays in tadpole life form. So it has a tail. This is not really showing much, but it stays like a tadpole. It has a tail, and it doesn't really look full like a frog. So it kind of stays in that stage. So that's another example. So amphibians, they're stuck with water because they have to go back to water to reproduce. They cannot be in places where there's no water nearby, because then they won't reproduce and they'll die out. And this reminds me of moss and fern plants, because they also need water to reproduce. Tetrapods also need water to reproduce. Not all tetrapods, actually. I want to say amphibians. Amphibians need water to reproduce. Next group is reptiles. So amphibians are tetrapods that began colonizing around 375 million years ago. They breathe air using lungs and through their skin if they're in water. So that's why they have a dual lifestyle, and they need water for reproduction and to keep their skin moist. So they do need water. So next we have reptiles, and reptiles and in mammals, they have something that's called amniot or amniotic sac. Maybe you heard about it being called amniotic sac. So it allows reptiles and mammals to breed in dry habitats. So they don't need water, because this amniotic sac keeps the embryo moist. It doesn't dry out. So they solve this problem with the amniot or amnion. So here is a bird egg. Looks like an egg yolk. So it's around it. That's the embryo. That's the amniot that keeps the embryo from drying out. In females who are pregnant, this is what it looks like, humans. So it's going to have this amniotic sac around it. And this is a turtle egg. So it's a leathery, hard outer layer surrounding the yolk that nourishes the developing embryo. Therefore, they don't need water, because they don't have to worry about the embryo drying out. Some similar structures around the mammal's embryo. So that's being shown right here. Sea turtles, they spend 99% of their life in water, and they come back on land only to reproduce. So if you really think about it, amphibians have to go back in water to reproduce, but the sea turtles, they live in water, but they have to come back to land because they have this development to reproduce. So mammals, there were mammals that lay eggs, and they evolved into marsupials later, and then into placental mammals, so us. Okay, so reptiles includes snakes, lizards, and birds. So sometimes people, don't really think about birds being a reptile, but they also include birds. They lay amniotic eggs, and they thrive on dry land. So they live in dry land. It's a very diverse group. The link between the birds and the lizards is this. I think I showed you this before. It's called Archaeopteryx. Pteri means wing. It's a winged animal. So they found the fossil for it about 100, 150 years ago. And this is this has a head like lizard, and then it has wings. So this is the link. So this also kind of tells us that dinosaurs had wings, and it was more common than you know, we thought. And there's this bird in New Zealand called cassowary. If you look at this bird, maybe black and white, and maybe imagine it doesn't have any feathers, it's going to look like a dinosaur. So here, maybe imagine that it didn't have any feathers. Maybe in black and white, it's going to look very similar to dinosaurs. Also on the legs, it has scales here. And it's really big, like ostrich. It can gut you if it gets mad. It's a pretty big foot, and it has scales. So birds, I already told you that birds came from dinosaurs, but didn't have to come from really big dinosaurs. Theropods are small dinosaurs. It could have came from theropod, like dinosaurs, the tiny ones. I think that's what they call them in Jurassic Park. So these are dinosaurs that turned into modern birds, the tiny ones. I think I was looking for a picture. So right here kind of shows you that a little bit. Okay, so that's reptiles. I have some pictures: snakes, lizards, birds, alligator, turtles. As are reptiles, they had to come to dry land to reproduce. Last group we have mammals. You might have heard mammals are all warm-blooded, and that's how you can define a mammal. The one feature that mammals share is the mammary glands. They all give milk. Mammals are the amniotes with hair, and they milk excreting mammary glands. Mammary glands is where the name mammals comes from. So they all give milk. All the mammals give milk. So which feature characterized tetrapods but not other vertebrates?